who are now they're in heaven because they're seeing what's going on.
Yeah.
So here in Britain, we've got a ticking time bomb here.
Yes.
I've said it for years.
Well,
Appeasement has failed.
It has, totally.
Appeasement's failed.
Alan, great to talk to you. We've seen some of those ISIS flags, some of those Hamas flags. We've seen them on the streets of London, for heaven's sake. And what did the police say? Oh, they said, that's just it's an Islamic flag. It's not an ISIS flag. It looks a bit different, looks similar, but not the same. I mean, unbelievable. Alan Duncan, documentary filmmaker. Good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Let's go to the phones. Tracy is in Northampton. Tracy, very good morning to you.
Yeah, you're my biggest fan, isn't he, really? What I've got to say is I picked up on something that you was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
About he's been more out of this country, sorting out other people's countries than he is our own country.
Yeah.
All what's gone on in this country doesn't seem to bother him.
No.
He hasn't been down to the floods. Now we've had 2 lots of floods.
Yeah.
He hasn't been sorting out the pensioners to get their pension allowance. I don't think he took this job to be Prime Minister. He took it to be top man, and he's always out the bloody country.
Yeah.
There needs to be a vote of confidence in there. Get him out, because he is going to take this country down to the... it's all... I don't like the man. I don't like... Something's got to be done.
Yeah.
What's happened with the petition we all done?
Yeah,
we don't know nothing about
there's supposed to be a debate in Parliament about it, but there will be one, I think, in January. I think that's what's happening. Tracy, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Let's get a voice note from David on Chris Philp.
Hi, Mike. Home of Common Sense. Great stuff. Thank God you're there. What a troll that last chap was. We all know that Labour walked in through an open door. They walked in. 14 years of the Conservative government did nout. This guy needs to step aside. None of them can say a word that anyone wants to hear. There's nothing they can say that we are just not rolling our eyes at. Okay, reform's coming on. That guy is he is arrogant, Isabel says. Absolutely correct. The arrogance of the Conservatives. Over. You have a good day.
David, thanks very much indeed. I think you're right. People are fed up to the back teeth of hearing from Tories like Chris Philp. Simon in Aberdeen says, how on earth can Chris Philp spout that claptrap about the Conservatives are the only party, blah, blah. It was their own crap policies that got us into this problem in the first place. What a joke. Well, exactly right. There's not much point in talking about reducing taxes. They put them all up. We're the highest tax rate for since the Second World War when the Tories were in. You know, I don't think, and the Labour Party haven't helped, but, you know, the point is that the Tories did not start off with a low tax rate, for heaven's sake. It's 9:36. Coming up, we're going to talk about those barbershops, you know, the ones you see in the high street, that you keep seeing growing in the high street. A fantastic investigation done by Sue Reid for the Daily Mail. She joins us next.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 9:39. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course, 4 glorious hours of Morning Glory. Since 6 we've been here. We've been talking an awful lot about what's been going on in Syria, an awful lot about what the government are going to do about Syrian refugees and asylum seekers. But I'm delighted to say now, and we're going to speak to Sue Reid. I don't want to say veteran journalist because some people don't like it, but you are a veteran journalist at Daily Mail. And Sue, you did a fantastic sort of expose a few days ago about the Britain's barbershop boom. I mean, everybody kind of knows, no matter which part of Britain they live in, it used to be just a city thing, but suddenly, I mean, even down in a little village in Sussex where I go at the weekends, there's about 3 barbershops in this tiny little high street, and you think, what exactly is going on here? There's clearly something going on, and you've kind of nailed what everybody suspected, really.
It's got a tremendous reaction, I have to say, because it has affected every town and village.
Yeah.
There were 18,000, according to a data survey.
Wow.
Now existing, and 670 opened last year.
Yeah.
So when I went round the country, I found that really nowhere was untouched.
Yeah.
So even in Leamington Spa, for
Yeah.
instance, there was still barbershops.
Yeah.
In Coventry, which is where I targeted my article, there are 22 on one street.
It's incredible, isn't it?
And it is all connected with, obviously, money laundering, cash, often with the smuggling of migrants into the country.
Yeah, it's
because that
migrants,
cash has to be
it's cash,
got
it's
rid
drugs,
of.
presumably as well. And I mean, a lot of these places, I remember seeing them starting to open up here a few years ago. There's never anybody in them. But I presume that the barber business is easy to launder money through, because you can't tell, nobody can really tell how many haircuts you're doing.
Well, I'm told it works like this, and I'm not a tax expert, but I'm told that it works like this. The barber takes 10k turnover, say. He then declares to the revenue, to the HMRC, 60k.
Right.
And that's 50,000 of dirty money
through,
that's been laundered. It's never gone anywhere near the barbershop.
Right.
And the HMRC doesn't complain because it's been paid. The HMRC isn't going to say, where did this money come from?
And so they'll take the tax off it?
They'll take it.
Yeah.
The local council doesn't complain because they're getting the rates.
Right.
So there's nobody monitoring this. And, of course, Mr. Plod isn't on the high street anymore.
No, but you don't have to even be walking around to know that this is a problem and this is something that's going on, and that surely there must be something suspicious about it.
And it is also about the denigration of our high streets. I mean, the other thing is that people aren't going to the high street because it's full of candy stores, Turkish-style barbers. I mean, these aren't all run by... They're a copycat Turkish styles.
A lot of them are Bulgarians, I've found. I don't know whether you found this, but there's a sort of a sizable...
It's almost everybody, from Ethiopians to...
Oh, is it?
But many are Arabic-speaking, I have to say.
OK. I didn't know, because the ones I've come across...
The Kurds are very big, and of course the Kurdish are, and the NCA would say this, are huge in the channel smuggling.
Right.
But the channel smuggling is only what we see. That's visible.
Yes.
But of course there are many other kinds of people smuggling,
people
drug
coming
smuggling,
in vans
and that cash has to be dealt with somehow.
Well, I've always said, certainly on the east coast of Kent and Sussex, there's so many places you can land boats that people wouldn't even ever see you.
No.
And so I'm sure there's many more people just landing on boats and running into the local town without even being picked up by RNLI or Border Force or anybody.
Yeah.
So, I mean, where does it end, though? I mean, did you find anybody in law enforcement who was even interested in what you had to tell them?
I think it's so embedded. We've allowed it to embed, like many of our other problems, and it's now almost... Well, obviously, something will have to happen. I mean, my solution would be, if this government would ever listen, which I doubt, would be to have specific high street squads Police squads.
Because it's not
Fraud
exactly difficult,
squads.
is it?
And it doesn't have to be just about targeting barbershops.
Yeah.
It's about the candy stores, it's about the vape shops,
Yeah.
it's about everything else that is cash.
Mm.
I mean, the government is so anti-cash,
Yeah.
but these are allowed complete impunity.
Yeah. But they're not just cash businesses anyway, but they can launder cash through these businesses.
Because ostensibly they
Yes.
are only taking cash.
But they can pretend,
I mean, if you
yeah.
press them, even in a nail salon,
Yeah.
and say, can I pay with a card?
Right.
You often get told, oh, it's broken this week.
Mm.
That has happened to me on the King's Road.
Right.
With the
Interesting.
Vietnamese nail salon and
Yeah.
Thai nail. They want cash too.
Right.
And please believe me, they're not innocent either.
No. And that's the other thing, is that a lot of the county lines gangs that we hear about so much, they use these barber shops, don't they, as kind of distribution networks as well.
Yes, they do.
Mm.
I'm sure they do.
And I can't understand why the police, because you would think it's a sort of home run, if you like, for the police, because they don't actually have to do much investigating. They just have to go into the place, arrest a couple of people, look at their books and go, hang on a minute, what's going on here?
Well, it's a very dangerous arena. It may look all very nice, a smart barber shop, bright lights, smart staff, but it is dangerous. I mean, you were just discussing
there was an incident just the other night in West London where the police were called to what was apparently a fight in the middle of the night, and what sounds like a sort of turf war between two rival gangs who both had barber shops on the same street. A man unfortunately died from his injuries, and several other people were quite badly injured, but it sounds like it was just a massive street fight. The police helicopters landed, the streets were all sealed off. People who lived in the area, which is, not a terrible area, were going, this is the worst thing we've ever seen. And it was it all happened at 4 o'clock in the morning.
And there are gangs involved. It will have been turf war. It will have been a row about where the money was going through which barbershop.
Or who was running which drugs into which street.
Yeah, I'm afraid to say.
Yeah. I mean, you haven't had any police reaction since your piece was published?
No, I haven't had any reaction from the police, any reaction from the government. Massive reader reaction.
Yeah.
I mean, huge.
Yeah. Because
on
everybody's
social
been
media,
looking at it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Staggering and very complimentary.
Yeah.
But the people know what's happening.
Yeah.
It's like people have been saying it, but nobody's listened.
Right.
Finally, somebody's...
Well, I think I first started
and
noticing...
people have said, well, it's happening here, it's happening here, it's happening here, it's happening here. It's, as you've said, you've got 4 in your...
Yeah, well, I noticed it, I think, first about 6 years ago, when places started opening up around this area, and suddenly I would walk past, there was one particular one just downstairs, and funny enough, it's not there anymore, and there was never anyone in there. And I occasionally did go in for a haircut, but I was always the only person being...
Very good haircut.
Yeah, and they had all these kind of, fancy, schmancy things like the fiery charcoal to put in your ears to burn, the hair in your ears, and then they put a towel over you and give you a sort of hot towel massage. So it was kind of curious, but they were all Bulgarians of Turkish origin, as I discovered, and now they've gone presumably somewhere else.
Well, yes, certainly. I mean, there have been connections with the smuggling gangs. A guy last year who was, very early last year, was sent down in Belgium for bringing in 10,000. He was a former barber. And
the guy that they arrested just recently, who's from, I think he's a Kurd from Turkey, is the guy that Keir Starmer had his little speech about. It was as if he was the one man who was responsible for all of the smuggling. But yeah, I mean, it's a massive problem. I just can't understand why nobody wants to do anything about it.
Because we never caught it early.
Yeah.
And it collided with the decline of the high street.
Yes.
The two are all connected.
Right.
Because who wants to go to a high street where you can't... I'm sorry to sound old-fashioned, but it's... A mum can't say to her daughter, let's go out shopping in the high street on Saturday afternoon
nowhere to go.
as they used to.
Yeah.
Let's have a nice lunch.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. Because in many high streets, nothing exists
apart
apart
it's just charity shops and barbers.
Yeah.
And is it the same in Wales and Scotland, or just in England?
I think Wales has got a problem, but only in certain areas, in the cities. Scotland definitely has a problem.
Yeah.
But I just didn't get into that. But people have responded by saying, Dundee, I think, and Glasgow.
And thousands of them. It's incredible, isn't it? And do you think they're all connected in terms of ownership? Is there a sort of a mass criminal sort of gang of people, or is it all individuals?
I think rather like the smuggling gangs.
Yeah.
They're all, you know, I mean, you have to realise the Mr. Bigs of the smuggling gangs may be in Erbil.
Mm.
They may be in Paris.
Yeah.
Very certainly in Essen in Germany.
Yeah.
But the guys down that chain, they don't... The guy on the beach... Sorry, this is my area of expertise, really. The guy on the beach pushing the migrants onto the boats, and sometimes at gunpoint, to get the money, to get the customers. He doesn't know who the beach commander is.
Mm.
The beach commander doesn't know who the area commander is.
Right.
In Calais and Dunkirk, that person doesn't know who Mr. Big is in Paris.
Right.
It's like a giant... Well, it's completely secretive. We were talking about false names, you know,
fake bank
burner
accounts,
phones.
presumably, yeah.
Absolutely.
Incredible. Well,
But
it's
it
quite
will
a
be
story.
the same setup.
Yeah, quite a story. Congratulations. It really is incredible. And if you haven't read it, you can read it. It's online now. You can still get it, can't you?
Yeah. Yes.
So, yeah. Sue Reed, thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Okay.
A fascinating story. Journalist at the Daily Mail. Somebody I've known without meeting her, actually, for a very long time. So very good to finally meet you. It's 10 minutes to 10, believe it or not. I don't know where we went with the time, but there's more coming up after this.
Another human being collapsing around you is a disturbing thing for everybody. That's why you need an ambulance. A big old wagon shows up that makes a noise, it has blue lights, and inside it are some experts in the world of first aid. They jump out, make you better, stick you on a stretcher, take you down the hospital. Fantastic. Why doesn't that happen like that anymore?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
9:53, welcome back to Morning Glory. It's Mike Graham here with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. Andrew says this, Mike, we have two-tier third gear, never here, Starmer, and I see our Chancellor was in Brussels yesterday who took pensioners' heating away and taxed businesses to new higher levels. That's Andrew in Nairn in the Highlands. Yeah, absolutely right. And Stuart says, have the idiots in Parliament not learned anything from the disasters in Afghanistan, Iraq and Libya? Let's talk to Mike, who's in Birmingham, wants to talk about Starmer. Hello, Mike.
Good morning, how are you?
Good, sir. What can I do for you?
The reason Sturman is going all around the world is for one reason. He knows he'll be out of his ear soon, so he's getting as many selfies and as many autographs as he can.
As well, we can but hope. There's a picture that was published yesterday of him standing outside a mosque in Abu Dhabi. It's the Grand Mosque, and it's a fantastic-looking building, all white. Looks a bit like the Taj Mahal. But he's standing outside it on his own, like posing as if he's, like, you know, straddling the world or something.
Yeah. Can I say something about the immigrants as well?
Yes, please.
When they come over here, give them a tent and a sleeping bag and stick them on the moors. How much they like that?
Well, yeah, absolutely right. I mean, the thing is, there's no question at all that there will be people who want to go back to Syria, but there's equally no reason for us to expect everybody who's here from there that wants to go back. That's the problem. Thanks for the call, Mike. Mike in Sussex says, this money laundering through barbers, car washes, restaurants is very, very old news. What is yet to be discussed is the kidnapping of drug users who fail to pay their dealers. Early, small time, the parents are asked to provide £1,000 to £5,000 for the return of the indebted daughter, son, or else. This tends not to be reported by the police, so it's under the radar. Well, it sounds like you know more about it than I do. I haven't heard that. But, yeah, I mean, the fact is, it may well be old news, Mike, but the thing is that these barbershops and what they do and how much money they generate should not be old news for the police. The police should surely be cramping down on them. Let's talk to Gwyn in North Wales. Gwyn, very good morning to you.
Hi, good morning, Mike.
What can I do for you, sir? Thank you very much.
Well, we're talking about Syrian immigrants and all that, immigrants in general, but the biggest perpetrator of it all was the Blair boy.
Yes.
You know, he started the whole thing, and every successive government has carried on in the same vein.
Yes.
And we haven't...
well, he sort of opened the door, didn't he? He opened the door, didn't he?
Yes, he wanted to change the face of the UK.
Yeah.
He didn't want to... He didn't like... as whites, and what he wanted was to bring in more people and change our society and everything, which they are doing now.
Yeah.
And we're not going to get anywhere, I don't know. But I live on a main road in North Wales here, and I thought, when sitting down in the front room, 1 in 10 would be of a different origin.
Yeah.
But I think it's more like 1 in 6 past my house now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is. I mean, it's certainly the case in London that there's a much bigger immigrant population in London now than there's ever been, bizarrely.
Yeah.
But listen, Gwyn, thanks very much indeed for the call. Graham says this, in Birmingham, these barbershops are practically empty. They can't be earning enough to pay the rent or business rates. I went in one and the staff are outside at the back of the shop on their mobile phones. Well, that's part of the reason why they do it, because they don't actually have to earn any money at all. They just funnel money through. You heard Sue Reid there saying that most of them will put a profit through of £50,000, which is not money they've actually earned cutting people's hair. It's money that they've got because they're laundering it for a drug dealer. Stuart says this, I passed by my grandma's old house the other day where we used to play football in the street, and the people used to clean their steps and sweep the pavement. Now it's a dirty, disgusting sight of old broken plastic wheelie bins with overflowing rubbish everywhere. And I think that is a very, very sad tale for an awful lot of parts of this country, because it is ridiculous. Paul from Wiltshire here saying, just wondering if Keir's trip to Cyprus is to give away the UK sovereign bases. Well, we're hopeful that we might get a word with, not a word with him, but a word from Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, who's apparently any second now about to land in Cyprus and is about to converse with some of the soldiers there. People are worried, of course, that he's gone there to give it all away, which he might have done. You never really know. Not quite sure what was the point of his trip, really, to Saudi Arabia and to the Gulf states in general. But Julie Hartley-Brewer's here. Hello. She might know. Very good morning to you.
Well, apparently, yeah, it's all about investment. And it's like, well, let's just sell off the whole of Britain.
Right.
I'm not sure I want the whole of Britain sold off to the Middle East.
And also, have you seen the projects that they're talking about? They're all kind of supposedly green hubs for this and green hubs for that.
Greenwashing nonsense.
It's absolute rubbish. I mean, he's talking to the big petro-states of the Middle East. They don't really mean it.
I know. Also, human rights, schmuman rights.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, no, it's just... Also, stay in the country. We've got some things to sort out here. Can you get on with the job? prime ministers who have difficult, tasks in the domestic field always like to go, prance around on the world stage,
they love
as opposed to doing the nitty-gritty of getting the NHS to work, getting public transport to work, building a new home, doing the stuff that actually make a difference to our lives.
The hard stuff.
The hard
not
stuff.
posing for pictures outside.
Hard stuff you don't just announce. You don't just make a little speech.
But he should have sent David Lammy there. But of course, there's a reason
we wouldn't have
didn't.
David Lammy here.
But the reason he hasn't sent David Lammy there because he's even more useless.
Yeah,
right.
But he appointed him. David Lammy was making a statement in the Commons about the fall of Assad, and no one in the government thought to tell him that they were suspending the asylum applications from Syria.
That doesn't bode well for him, does it?
No. Yeah. A, you're out of the loop. And B, absolute abject failure once again of the government to communicate
with each other. But their communications as well. Pat McFadden on the day earlier in the day said that they might be considering. Might be considering lifting the status of this terror group, and then Starmer said no, we're not doing that. I mean, I don't know who's running anything anymore.
I mean, no one.
No.
I mean, the civil service, who apparently is going to be a cost taken to them.
Yeah, I don't think so.
That's not going to happen, is it?
It's really not.
It's not going to happen.
It's really not.
But
Julie Hartley-Brewer is coming next.
Christmas party, you have to invite everybody, including everyone in the civil service you don't like.
I know. Nightmare. See you tomorrow.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And a very, very good morning to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, it is great to have your company. Also wonderful to have the company of commentator Sam Armstrong this morning as well. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
You might have to step into the hot seat if my voice gets any deeper today. There are a lot of lurgies going around, aren't they? I I'm trying to work out if I got it from Mike or Mike got it from me. Working our way through.
Super spreaders.
Super spreaders. I'll be coughing at you throughout the show, you lucky, lucky thing. Anyway, lots to talk about today. Obviously, Syria is very much in focus, but as a lot of the front pages are telling us, as we were discussing on the show yesterday, we're always ahead of the game on this show. Actually, the Syria story is an awful lot about what could happen here. And this, as thousands of jihadis being held in Syria, pose a chronic threat to the West's security if they're released. Who's saying that? A man who probably knows, the former head of MI6. He's warned that. This, by the way, is the asylum cases from Syrians have been put on hold because, let's face it, they're all saying, I had to leave Syria because I was being persecuted by the Assad regime. Well, Assad's gone, so not sure your claim stands, but are we going to see a flow back to Syria of people, or are we going to see more fleeing depending on what happens in Syria? Well, once again, I think we're back into the territory we're in around 2015 would be my best guess. Let's go talk about more stories back close to home, though. Criminals are being allowed to work from home to complete their community sentences. As figures show, offenders carried out more than 540,000 hours of online courses last year. So when they're actually having to do a community centre, you might think they're doing useful things like picking up litter, clearing up graffiti, but doing something useful for the community. No, they're sitting at home on a laptop. It's not really quite what most of us think of as a punishment, is it? Plus, Chancellor Rachel Reeves last night vowing to take an iron fist to Whitehall spending, demanding that her cabinet colleagues get real on cutting the size of the state. If you think that Rachel Reeves and Labour are going to cut the size of the state, I mean, you are living in cloud cuckoo land. And here's another bit of cloud cuckoo land. The Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, has ordered the NHS to prioritise emergency treatment for the sickest patients this winter. I mean, shouldn't they be doing that already? Isn't that what basic triage is? They want to avoid people dying in the corridors in A&E. Well, that's a good idea, given that we are not, you know, in a third world country. You'd think that would be pretty darn basic. No, not in the UK, where we go from winter crisis to spring crisis to summer crisis to autumn crisis to winter crisis and back again. Anyway, this is Talk. Welcome to the Home of Common Sense. Lots more to come, including going to talk to a student who has been sacked by her own university students' union from their radio station simply because of some interviews she posted with people they don't agree with on issues of trans rights versus women's rights. She is, of course, completely sane and dealing with facts, but she has been ousted from that role. Free Speech Union, which everyone, you're crazy not to be a member of it these days, if you ask me, are backing her. We're going to talk to her, that's Connie Shaw, a little bit later as well. Sam Armstrong, though, let's get back to Syria. And this is the question we're posing to our audience today as well, with thousands of jihadis held in Syria prisons posing a chronic threat to the West if they are released. This is what the former MI6 chief has warned. I want to know simply what people's reaction is to that. Like, how concerned are you about that threat of jihadi terrorists returning to this country? Jihadi brides like Shamima Begum, we mentioned that on the show yesterday as well. Her lawyer is tuppence worth in, saying, well, she's got a stronger case for getting back to this country, even though she's lost her British citizenship now after all her court cases. I want to hear your thoughts, so give us a call, 0344 499 1000, text on 87222, or get in touch on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. How concerned are you, Sam?
I'm enormously concerned, and I'll tell you why. Because there is literally nothing standing between these people and our shores and our streets. Any one of these people leaving, they were called camps, right? But in actual fact, they were basically prisons. There was soldiers around the outside from various rebel factions and or the Syrian government keeping these incredibly dangerous people in there. All of that is broken down, and they are now able to walk across land, sea, all the way here into the UK, smuggle themselves across in a boat, and they will be here. And once they're here, we know we will never, ever, ever get rid of these people.
We'll give them a nice hotel room, 3 meals a day.
And look, the same applies to Miss Begum, right? Yeah. Shamima Begum can now, we presume, walk out of the camp, our rural camp out there in Syria that we know that she's been stuck in for the past few years. If she's smart enough to pay a people smuggler to get her across Europe...
She was smart enough as a teenage girl to get to Syria. Pretty sure she can manage it as a 25-year-old.
And I'll tell you the truth, it was probably harder for her to get out of this country and into Syria than it is to smuggle herself back into our country. That is how porous our borders are. And look, she'll be back here. And despite the fact we stripped her of her citizenship, despite the fact that MI5 have told us that she was stitching suicide vests together, despite the fact that she's made it very clear she hates this country and everything we stand for, she will be here, she will be stuck, She will be here at our expense. We'll be paying for it, and we will never, ever, ever get rid of her. Citizenship be damned.
And she will be free. My argument has always been she was British. Now, she renounced her British citizenship. I would rather she was here and behind bars and not a threat to other people. Again, the security services reckon she is absolutely a threat to this country. She is totally and utterly radicalised. Do not believe all the sort of, oh, I'm looking so Western now. No, she did not think she'd done anything wrong. She thought everything was worth it when she was first found in that camp. Now, she is a danger to us. The reality is, if she spent even 2 months behind bars here, you know, who are we kidding? She's going to be free on our street. She's a danger. We cannot have her back in this country. But this is the thing. This Sir Alex Dearlove is the former MI6 chief. Apologies, Sir Alex Younger, apologies, MI6 chief. And he was in charge of MI6, you know, around the time all this, the chaos was happening. You know, he's talking about, you know, there are thousands of jihadis. At least 70 Brits are being held in these camps. 15 men, jihadi fighters, 20 of their wives, the jihadi brides, but also 40 children. Now, there's been a lot of sympathy for the children. Again, I'm really sorry the kids have been brought up in these circumstances, but do I want a load of radicalised kids, the children of Islamic radicals? No, I don't. Sorry. No, I'm sorry. I just don't. We've got to prioritise our country. We've already got a huge number of Syrian asylum seekers. 1 in 6 of all those granted refugee status in this country are Syrian. Pretty much a shoo-in. You know, you really have to do something very wrong for you to not get your, once you've actually got your asylum application process, not to get that. But we've had 6,500 Syrians claiming asylum almost here, almost entirely those people who come over on those Channel boat crossings. There's some deal going on with the Germans about supplying of boats and things. No chance at all that's going to be stopped. And this is the interesting thing. David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, yesterday, he was referring to Bashar al-Assad as the rat of Damascus, fleeing to Moscow with his tail between his legs and all of that. But he was talking about how, you know, we've got people who are, you know, going to be, you know, many Syrians saying they want to go back to Syria. But, you know, if it all goes horribly wrong, as let's face it, most of us suspect it will, because we are talking about this rebel group being effectively, you know, they're jihadists. They may not be quite ISIS or Al-Qaeda, but they're jihadists. Then we'll see that flow back again. And there's just no evidence that Europe is able to withstand, you know, hordes of people arriving from Syria. I mean, and we've got bad dealings with Erdogan in Turkey. He's kept millions in Syria in return for billions and billions in aid from the West. I mean, this is going to be an absolute abject disaster. People cheering on the streets and everyone saying, isn't it wonderful that Assad's gone? But the reality is it could be an awful lot worse very, very soon.
Do you know what? I actually don't agree. I think it's just going to be the same old, same old. We've had all of these people coming across claiming they're Syrians. By the way, we've got no idea how many of them actually are Syrians or aren't Syrians. But if you claim...
There are 3 or 4 countries, Afghanistan, Syria, you're going to be allowed to stay.
You get 99% acceptance rates. So they've all been saying they're democracy activists. I guarantee they're now all going to say they're Christian converts, they're gay or whatever, so they still can't go back. People are not coming across, in my view, and this is a controversial opinion, but people are not coming across because of danger or war or anything else. They're coming across, and I don't blame them for this, because it's a good life in the UK, because you're off to a better future, because you're going to earn quite a bit more money. And that's a perfectly legitimate opinion. But
However,
we cannot afford to consume half of the Arab world plus Africa. We just can't, right?
Nope.
30% of men on the African continent of the relevant age brackets say they want to come to the UK or come to the Western world. There's no way we could absorb that. It's just ridiculous. So what I think is we're going to continue to see what Douglas Murray calls the slow death of Europe, in which millions upon millions of people continue to gradually but steadily but consistently make their way over to our shores, and our broken system won't be able to deal with the fact that we're looking at a systemic flaw.
And then we end up with, I mean, again, listen, things that people don't like to talk about, but then we end up with an MP in the House of Commons calling on the Prime Minister to bring in a blasphemy law. And we have police across the country, it's not on Twitter, on X, posting notices about how, you know, if you're going to your Christmas market, do be careful, we'll be there to keep you safe. What are we being careful for? What is the threat? Why are there bollards everywhere? What is the threat we're worried about? What is it? Can anyone remember what that threat is? Because I don't remember this being an issue, you know, 20 years ago, even 15 years ago, and suddenly now we need to be protected when we go out Christmas shopping. Why? What's changed? What's happened? Why do we need to be protected going Christmas shopping? Is anyone... Well, do call in and let me know, because the police don't want to say anything, the politicians don't want to say anything, and everyone's just going to pretend everything's absolutely fine when we have imported a problem in our country. Now, most people who come to this country just want to make a better life for themselves, as you say. But we don't know who people are. We've got no idea. 90% of the people coming on the Channel migrant boats, I mean, those boats, they throw away their documentation, as you say. Or I'm from Syria. Sure you are. How are we proving this? What are we doing? DNA testing? We don't even check whether or not they're 14 or 24 when they claim to be kids.
Yeah, and strangely enough, every time we do the dental checks, a significant percentage of them, at the very least, turn out to be adults of, a young, as Nigel Farage would say, fighting age. And look, that's reality.
Well, these, of course, it's all the pro-democracy activists who are being telling you, they all just happen to be young men.
It just so happens that the most vulnerable people in the Middle East, all of those that are at gravest danger, in most desperate need of our compassion, are men. In their 20s, who happen to have just enough money to pay dangerous criminals to smuggle them into our country.
I know. It's an absolute joke, isn't it? I mean, I want to know, how concerned are you about this? Because if you're not, wake up. Just wake up. Now, of course, we'll be accused of xenophobia, bigotry, Islamophobia. Every single thing. I'm sorry. This is a third world country. Well, it's certainly been bombed back into the medieval ages by Assad, his awful leader. I would like the people of Syria to live in a free and happy, inclusive democracy. I'm not optimistic. It's not worked out pretty much anywhere else since the Arab Spring, so I'm not optimistic. But I'm not entirely sure why, when it doesn't work out, it has to become our problem. It does become our problem. We need to guard against it. That's why I'm talking about it now, because we need to talk about it. But I'm not sure that the solution is people just turning up on our shores or turning up across Europe. And it is, as you say, and as Douglas Murray's brilliant book on this issue, we are seeing a cultural sort of annihilation going on in Europe, and our politicians are only just vaguely beginning to wake up to it, simply because voters are saying, no, we're seeing it. You're all living in you've got your chauffeurs and your nice homes in your nice leafy suburbs. You are not living the reality of this. And you're not at the Christmas markets where apparently, we're going to face imminent death at any point. I think a lot of people will be talking about, are we going to get another wave of the attacks we had? We remember back in 2017, we had 3 or 4 in a row, and it really was just like, when is the next bomb going off, or when is the next car going to be driven into people? I just don't think we should be living like this. I don't think we should think this is something that we just put up with and we accept, and yet we import people to this country or allow them to stay in this country, and we don't know who they are and whether or not they could do us wrong. Do get in touch. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. What do you make of the Israelis? They've been launching airstrikes on Syrian air bases overnight, but also on basically stockpiled weapons. They say they don't want jihadis to get their hands on them. It's reported now that Israeli tanks are less than 20 miles from the capital, Damascus, in Syria. IDF has denied these claims, but bearing in mind, looking at the geography, Damascus is in the far southwest of Syria, very close to the Israeli border. But there's no doubt at all, you've got the Turks. In northern Syria, you've got the Iraqis. There's an awful lot of people with interest in what goes on in Syria right now.
Yeah, well, Israel takes a very straightforward approach, which is it is not prepared to allow events overseas to damage its own national security.
It's mind-blowing. We should think about following this.
And you know what? International law... or contested notions of international law, international human rights arrangements. It hasn't gone and made an application to some body in Strasbourg before it's gone and done this. It said, no. Do you know what? Our first priority is to keep the Israeli people safe.
Yep.
And by damn, we're going to do it. And it's gone there. It's done it. It's bombed first, frankly, and it's asked questions later. But so should it, because it knows it has been living under an existential threat for the entirety of its existence. Yep. And that breeds a kind of recognition that this is a very real world with very real bad people that are prepared to do very real things to your citizenry.
Don't make a speech in Parliament and have a little meeting about it, but just deal with it, exactly. Let's talk about another story which has actually been very big over the last 5 days, in New York in particular, the quite clearly sort of targeted assassination, the murder of healthcare chief executive Brian Thompson on the streets of New York. He's the head of the biggest healthcare insurance company in America, United Health. healthcare. He was shot in the back of the head by a gun with a silencer on the streets of New York. A 5-day manhunt ended yesterday with a 26-year-old Luigi Mangione taken into custody after being spotted by a fellow customer at a McDonald's in Pennsylvania, 280 miles west of New York City. It turns out, this guy, Ivy graduate, very, very intelligent, very successful. He's now apparently everyone's sort of all these mad women online are saying like how hot he is, but apparently a big fan of the Unabomber. It turns out he's kind of disappeared. All his friends haven't been in touch with him for a few months, but suddenly it would appear he is the chief suspect, and as I say, has been charged with murder in this case. Extraordinarily, for obviously a highly intelligent man, found with a weapon that matched the weapon used and casings for the bullets, left a mobile phone, a bottle of water. He's been in places where there's clearly going to be CCTV showing his face. It's almost like, frankly, he wanted to be found, I would suggest. All quite bizarre. But, I mean, there's no doubt at all that he's getting quite a lot of support now. There's no one who deserves to be shot dead on the streets like this. But I have to say, I mean, the stories we've been hearing about what happens with, with insurance, healthcare in America. I mean, the biggest cause of personal bankruptcy is due to health insurance failing and people having to pay healthcare costs. There's an awful lot of sympathy for this man, rather scarily.
Yes, well, there is. I mean, look, I think one of the things we can probably all be grateful for is, despite the NHS being actually a pretty bad system for delivering healthcare, especially compared to our European counterparts, the American system is equally bad, especially if you are on a middle or a lower income.
Oh, if you're rich, it's the best healthcare in the world.
That's
if you're not, but healthcare in America costs 3 times more percentage of GDP than our healthcare costs do. It's an absurd way.
And you are so dependent on these big corporations like United Healthcare, which arbitrarily deny claims in order to keep their profits up.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm wondering if we're going to have more claims for healthcare in this country, because we all get fat after Christmas. Lots of stuff in the papers about, if you drink too much, how alcohol affects your body. It's a lot of finger wagging. I kind of say, a few years ago, it used to all be like, where can you go to get your festive booze? Now it's all, don't drink too much. God, the misery guts out there. Here's some really bad news, though. Mince pie prices have jumped by up to 40%. I love this, in a Christmas shopping blow, the headlines say. Turns out, very poor sultana harvest in Turkey, where apparently most sultanas are grown. You learn something new every day. What amazes me is no one's decided to mention climate change. Surely they could have elbowed that in, couldn't they?
I have a very strict rule, actually. It's 2 mince pies per year.
That's why you're svelte and healthy.
I think any more than that, they get a bit cloyy, a bit saccharine, a bit sickly, and I can't really cope with more.
My mother-in-law makes the best mince pies, I have to say. There's always like, do you want me to bring my mince pies? Yes, we want you to bring your mince pies.
Yeah, you want that sort of extra thick, crusty, short crust pastry that only the homemade ones get. The pastry from the shops, actually, I think is what lets them down, really.
Too much sugar.
Too much sugar in the
your
pastry.
Thoughts on mince pies, folks? Let's get to the really, really important stories today. More from Sam Armstrong. Can someone pop out and get some mince pies now, please? And we'll get your calls in about what's going on in Syria, the impact of that here, jihadi fighters, jihadi brides, and do you want any of these people coming to Britain? What should the country do to deal with this? Love to hear your thoughts. Also, give us a call on any of the big topics we're talking about today. The number to call is 0344 499 1000. Do get in touch. 10:22 is the time. Up next, we'll take a quick break, then we'll take your calls. So we'll be talking to Tory Shadow Minister Matt Vickers about all things politics. This is Talk.
are kitted out in a very, very attractive style. And supposedly they are for homeless people, and under that bracket, Cardiff Council includes migrants. Those people get to live in these brand new units for pretty much nothing. Down the road, there is an entire luxury hotel that we, the taxpayer, are paying to be full of migrants. So why can't some of those migrants go in these units?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's go straight to the phone lines now. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call, and the texts and tweets coming in about the thousands of jihadis held in Syrian prisons, posing a chronic threat to the West if they're released. That's what the former MI6 chief has warned. He probably knows what he's talking about. Your reaction to that? Well, David says, well, there's a surprise, but they were being invaded by these types from across the channel every... We were being invaded by these types from across the channel every day. Johnny says Labour will no doubt put them up in five-star hotels and we will all pay for it. It's like paying for your own execution. And Poppy says, can't believe people think what happened in Syria is good. At least Syria was stable before. Now who knows what is going to happen. And Jack says, our government is cheering all this on. When will they ever learn? Well, let's go to Matthew, who's in Somerset on the phone lines. Hello, Matthew.
Hi.
Hello,
Hi,
what do you want
Julia.
to say?
Well, it just occurred to me that whatever you think about the Assad regime, it was a secular country. They did allow Christians to worship there and have churches, etc., along with several other religions, I would say. So it was one of the few places in the Middle East where that was...
yeah, that was even possible.
A scenario, if you like.
Yeah, I mean, except it was ruled by a sort of a tiny Sunni, minority, and people were persecuted. I mean, look, people, like some of these messages say it was a stable country. Well, I mean, yeah, he wasn't, Ambassador al-Assad wasn't actually in charge of most of the country, well, all of the country. We had, rebels everywhere, and he'd killed 500,000 of his own people. I mean,
Yeah, I don't say that he's any different to any other dictator out there, but the point I'm making is the government has now turned around and said, oh, we're going to stop all asylum applications for Syrians because the country's safe now. But it's probably not going to be safe for Christians for very long. So we're going to have a lot of Christians applying for asylum.
And people claiming to be Christian, as Sam pointed out earlier.
Are we going to turn Christians away when we allowed everybody else in, but we're not going to let Christians in?
Well, that's it. I think they're not necessarily saying it's safe now. They're simply saying that, the reason that people would give is always, I'm being persecuted by the Assad regime. Well, that's gone, so that's not a viable reason. But waiting to see what actually happens in the coming months before restarting that. Should we? I mean, here's the thing. You could argue, Christians being persecuted in Syria would have a cause to arrive here, but we've already seen, haven't we, people claiming, they're Christian or claiming they're gay or claiming whatever it is, the latest tick box to gain asylum rights here. I mean, how many do we take? Realistically, how many do we take?
No, I mean, actually, I think we have far too much immigration from everybody, and we've taken our fair share as far as I'm concerned. But I just think it's the hypocrisy of the government. It's 1 minute they'll take anybody, and the next minute they turn around and say, "Oh no, we're not taking more of these people because it's a safe place." But it isn't safe, is it? It's not going to be safe.
But I don't think that was the argument given. It wasn't that it was a safe place. It was a specific reason that people were giving for their claims. But again, I think those reasons will suddenly change. They'll suddenly all have something else that they're unhappy about. Matthew, thank you for that call. Mandy's on the line in Worcester. Hello, Mandy.
Hi, Julia.
Hello.
Hi, Sam. Hi. Great programme, as usual.
Thank you.
I never miss you.
You're very
think you're
kind.
amazing.
What do you want to say?
You're amazing. No, really. No, I am I mean, I've just become a grandmother for the second time. I've got a little
Congratulations.
tiny grandson. Thank you. And I've got a 5-year-old granddaughter. And Julia, I am so worried. I am so worried for their future. I really am. In this country, I really am. I just don't know what it holds for them. I can't. I mean,
what are your worries specifically in relation to this and other other stories coming up? What's the specific worry?
I think it's because we've just got. There's no. I mean, like many people have said, the immigration is so high, there's just no end to it, and it's. I mean, you just can't get a pint into a half-pint pot, as people used to say, and there's a lot of areas, especially around the Midlands where I'm from, where people, nobody integrates with each other. There's little sections of people that don't wish to integrate. They don't want to speak our language. And I'm sorry if that offends people.
No, you shouldn't be sorry if that offends people. You're perfect. But that's the reality. When people talk about, it's wonderful melting pot, isn't it diverse?
No, it's not.
No, you got one group of people from one country living there, one group living there. They're not speaking to each other, not integrating, not speaking the language. I mean, I'm sorry. That's a recipe for disaster.
I mean, there's problems with the health service. There's just far too many people. There's not enough room. And now with all the trouble with Syria, and we don't know who's going to be coming over. And I'll be honest with you, I don't trust this lot that's in power.
Nope.
I really don't. I don't believe anything that any of them say. They may, Yvette Cooper might say, we're going to put a hold on this. I don't believe her. I don't believe Keir Starmer, wherever he is. He may be.
Which country is he in today? I mean, he's not here running ours, is he?
He's definitely collecting his air miles. I just don't know, where the future is, and I'm just worried about my own children and my own grandchildren.
I mean, my biggest concern isn't even economically. I think my biggest concern is culturally. I do think that we are seeing a massive, massive change in the culture of our country, and not for the good. And no, that's got absolutely nothing, because I know what people are going to say, absolutely nothing to do with whether it's the colour of anyone's skin, cultural, it's social cohesion, people sharing the same values, wanting the same thing, being able to communicate, accepting Western liberal values, these basic stuff that cornerstones of what's made us a successful and relatively happy, peaceful country, and we're throwing it all away.
I mean, you said in the last 15 years, it has. It's literally just changed into such a very dangerous and worrying country. And I really do. I feel really concerned. I mean, just simple little things like all the trouble with people not putting up Christmas lights or changing the name of, there was a...
That's you, by the way, that's usually white Brits doing that. Is bleeding heart, white Brits who think somehow it's offensive. I'm an atheist. I still celebrate Christmas. It's a national holiday in our Christian country.
Same here. I mean, I was christened, but I am, like yourself, I'm an atheist, but... it's not necessarily just all about, religion at Christmas. It's about family time and whatever. But it feels like it's being taken away from us, and the people in charge really don't like us, I don't think.
Ending on an absolute note of truth there, Matt, they don't like us. That's so true. Mandy, thank you so much for your call. I think you're speaking for a lot of people in this country. I really do. Really appreciate you getting in touch. Sam Armstrong, that's really good point that Mandy made. She doesn't trust this government. She doesn't think they like us. I'm not sure the last Tory lot particularly liked us either. But that's true, isn't it?
Look, it is... The gulf between our ruling class and those that are being ruled has never been wider in my lifetime, and nor has the contempt. I have to tell you, working in and around media, Westminster, etc., the contempt with which normal people, their views, their concerns, the frustrations that they have, dealing with the services that government is meant to provide, the contempt with which they are viewed is something that would blow anybody away. Look, if there was a fly-on-the-wall documentary in any given government office, I guarantee you, within the week, every single one of the cabinet ministers would have to resign for saying something out of turn.
Absolutely.
It is just appalling the way that people have spoken about.
Let's put some of that to our next guest after a quick break. We're going to talk to Matt Vickers. He's a shadow minister for crime and policing in the Home Office. We'll talk about this threat from Syria, what's going on back here. I mean, I don't know. We'll see if we can find where Keir Starmer is today, because he darn well isn't in Britain. He never is anymore. Not that we've got any problems to deal with here, guys. I mean, come on, he's got other things to do. We'll talk about all that up next. Do keep your calls coming in. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. I'm sure a lot of you want to echo what Mandy had to say just then. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Sam Armstrong still with me, and delighted to be joined right now by Conservative MP Matt Vickers, now the Shadow Crime and Policing Minister. Very good morning to you.
Good morning. Long time no see.
Long time no see. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Lots I want to talk to you about. Let's start, though, with what's going on in Syria and statements in the House of Commons yesterday. Although no one bothered to tell Foreign Secretary David Lammy that the decision had already been made on actually putting a pause on all those asylum claims from Syrians, obviously fleeing the Assad
could have equally, if not more, devastating consequences for the Middle East and for us. We've got to see what unfolds there. Work with international partners to make sure that it works out in our best solutions. But I think it's too early to tell exactly what can be done and how it should be done and what the consequences are going to be. So I think there's a lot of watching to be done. We've got to work with the security services and see what unfolds and take a watching brief and pay a hell of a lot of attention as an international community. We saw the UN Security Council meet yesterday to look at what comes next and what our part in that is.
Yeah, well, indeed, lots of people will say, well, it's not for us to play a part. They may not have much interest. We aren't talking about a jihadist, prescribed terrorist organisation taking part, and suddenly everyone's going, oh no, these are the nice guys. They're not the good guys. They're not the nice guys. They've been executing people willy-nilly in the parts of Syria that they've been in control of. I can't see this going any better than it did in Afghanistan with the Taliban, who were going to be all, the new Taliban light. Well, that's not worked out very well for women not allowed to leave their homes or even speak outside their homes. Do you agree with Reform MPs who say that we should, in terms of the Syrians who are already here as refugees, claiming asylum, going through that process, already granted it, that we should be immediately deporting them?
Well, I think you've got to look at each case in its own rights. But I think, you know what, the vast majority of those cases now are baseless, aren't they? If you were coming here to flee Assad, there's no reason to be fleeing anymore. I imagine they should be happy to go back, shouldn't they?
Well, I suppose they're wanting, if they're sensible, they're wanting to wait and see what happens, aren't they? Let's talk about what happens here in the UK, because we were just discussing on the show. It's amazing how many police services have been putting out, police forces, I should say, been putting out messages on social media warning people to be careful ahead of Christmas shopping. If you're going out to markets, we're here to keep you safe, but, be careful, And now, a lot of this is not about pickpocketing. It's not having your phone stolen. It's about some other kind of threat, which is never very precisely identified, but it does seem to involve having very large steel bollards erected around pretty much every shopping area in Britain. Do you know why we should be afraid when we go Christmas shopping this year?
I think, there's two elements to it, though, isn't there? There's all these police forces that, crikey, if you go back a few years and you'd seen people walking around with some of the kit that our police officers are carrying now in some of these busy city centres, or you'd seen these bollards being erected, you would be beside yourself. You would think it was going to be huge. But actually, I think part of it is around the change in threat, but the other part of it is about the fact that we risk assess everything to the nth degree and are probably disproportionate in some situations. We ask people to consider all the threats and respond accordingly. That sometimes goes to the nth degree, meaning we do a hell of a lot more scare the life out of everybody.
So you think the police force reacts to always no reaction until someone drives a lorry into families seeing Santa in his grotto, or when they set off a backpack bomb, doesn't it? It's always no reaction until that point. But why do we accept that this is something that normal and that this is something that we're just going to live with in this country, that when we go Christmas shopping, there are bollards to stop people smashing into us and we're going to be told to be wary of, this unknown threat. We all know what it is. It's Islamist terrorism.
Well, we talk about terrorism, we talk about people with very serious mental health problems as well, and some of the things that we've seen, some of the behaviours that we see from people now, for whatever reason, off the chart. They're just things you would never see before. You would have never assumed that human beings were capable of doing such things to one another. And therefore, we've probably got to prepare for all eventualities. But doing so at the nth degree in town centres across the country.
Maybe part of the preparation would be that the people who pose a threat shouldn't be in this country in the first place.
Well, each case in its own right. But, it's not for me to assume that everybody who behaves in a certain way because of where they come from or what they do. But you know what? We talk about immigration, we talk about borders, we talk about the cultural impact as well as the financial cost of all of this. Horrendous situation that we've got to with immigration, but I wouldn't like to tie the two together, and I'm sure I'll get...
No, I know politicians don't like to tie the two together, but I'm afraid that they are. But there we are. Just finally on this issue, Shamima Begum's lawyer has said that her hopes of returning to the UK, despite having her British citizenship stripped from her, have been bolstered by the fall of Bashar al-Assad and the risk of her being, just somehow left out in the Syrian desert. Do you think that she should be allowed to come back to Britain?
It is utterly balmy. We've been through the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court have said no further right to appeal. I mean, the problem is that actually, change of government, we know that last time Labour was speaking out in her favour. We know that we've seen the current government, members of the current government, opposing the deportation of foreign criminals. So you kind of got to wonder whose side they're on. But it's been through the courts. It's been to the nth degree. This court.
So not gonna happen. Let's also talk about the situation we've got with what criminals are doing as part of their punishment. We know this government is very, very, very keen on not putting people behind bars. I mean, women apparently shouldn't really go to prison at all. But certainly those who were given short sentences shouldn't face short sentences. They should be doing community service or being tagged and at home. Now we understand from a new set of documents that criminals are being allowed to work from home for community sentences. So they're not even out, picking up litter, not, getting rid of graffiti or the like. They're sitting at home on a laptop doing some sort of online course as part of their community sentence. I don't think that's what most people would think of as a punishment for a crime. As a shadow Home Office minister, is that good enough for you?
Do you know what part of these community sentences is about people actually going out, earning their keep, doing something. But the other part of it is about justice being seen to be done in that community that's been affected, and that's a huge part of it. People want to know that when something happens, there's consequences. They want to see people living out those consequences in and around them so they know it counts for something. But also, part of going out and being amongst other people and speaking to the probation officer or whoever is running that community service is about learning the lessons from what you've done. You're not going to do that sat at home multitasking, because whatever you might have on one screen, Christ knows what you might have on the other screen if you're so inclined. You might be double dipping, doing your community service on one laptop whilst committing the next crime on the other laptop. It's scary. It's not.
Well, it's a joke. That said, if your lot, I know you're a former deputy chair of the Conservative Party when they were in office. If your lot built enough prisons, because you started sending people to prison for longer, which I think is a good thing, and not letting people out quite as soon, which is a good thing, but you didn't bother building the prisons to actually accommodate those people. You didn't build enough. You know that, I know that, and National Audit Office reports and everything confirmed that. Why didn't you?
We had the biggest prison building programme.
You didn't build enough.
The fact we were choosing to lock people up for longer and give the worst offenders longer sentences, it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, but you didn't build enough prisons for the next lot arriving.
Of course we should have been building more prisons than we were, but we were building them at the biggest rate since the Victorian era. We were building them at a hell of a pace. We just weren't building them quick enough to deal with all of the horrific people that were coming.
No thinking through of policy. I mean, we're seeing even more of that from the Labour government right now.
Actually, let's go back to the case in point. That one of the biggest problems with our prison population is, isn't it, about 12% of them are foreign national offenders?
Yep.
Well, only we're not building them enough, building them quickly enough. We weren't deporting them quickly enough. Although we saw all of the challenges.
If only you'd been in government and able to do things.
Oh, we see a judicial system that worked against us at every fortnight.
If only the government was in a position to change the law and do things.
Well, yeah, but you look at cases like the Shamima Begum case where it goes to the nth degree, and you've now got a lawyer saying that we should be. Yeah. You should open the door again and have another go.
Here's the thing: I spent years as a political editor rowing with ministers. And okay, I know you're now a shadow minister, talking about we can't do anything because of the EU. Well, we got out of the EU, and now we can't do anything because of the courts. Government's supposed to be in charge. They're supposed to run things and do the job. Can't keep making excuses. Someone stopped us doing it. You were in power 14 years. You had plenty of time.
Well, I wasn't personally in power.
No, but your party was.
But actually, I think you make a very good case. But in real terms, the way that this system works, when you see the fight that we have over ridiculous cases like Shamima Begum, like lots of other foreign national offenders, and people in this country who will go out of their way to prevent us deporting such people. Government, people who are now in the cabinet who were opposing the deportation of foreign national offenders. They're now running the country.
Yep. Lucky old us. Well, if you guys hadn't made such a fist of it, that wouldn't be the case, eh? Talking of fists, Chancellor Rachel Reeves has said that she wants to take an iron fist to Whitehall spending, massive cuts. Been told Downing Street, if it's not one of the top priorities, by the way, immigration is not one of the top priorities of the government, then you're not going to get the money. Do you think there's going to be big savings, that there's going to be a big cut in the number of civil servants and Whitehall spending?
If there ever was, they're not the people to do it. We had plans in place to reduce the number of civil servants. They've completely ditched that as a proposal. In the first 25 days in office, this government spent £25 billion. They talked about this £22 billion black hole. They're spending 70 billion more than they were before the budget. It's a disaster. We've got an energy company. They bought an energy company that doesn't produce any energy. We're seeing money doled out, public sector pay rises that just off the charts. Can you imagine being told you're getting a 15% pay rise, a 22% pay rise?
It was over 2 years, and it was after years of not having pay rises. I mean, they're still going to be paid less than they were in 2010 in the real terms.
It's ridiculous. 15%. Train drivers on 65k getting a grand pay rise. That is insane.
No, I'm with you, absolutely with you on that. Just final, very quick. Do you think everything would be running better in this country if Keir Starmer was occasionally in the country and not off on another foreign tour?
I don't know. It might be in our interest to keep him out of the country. I'm not sure.
Matt Vickers, Shadow Crime and Policing Minister, Tory MP, thank you for that. Sam Armstrong?
Well, look, I think Matt makes a number of good points, but as you keep putting back to him, the Conservative government did let people down on a number of issues. And so far, I'm not sure the Conservative Party is doing enough, actually, to apologise for parts of their record.
Could do with some policies sometime soon as well, Kemi Badenoch. Some policies, please. 10:50 is the time. Up next, we're going to talk about the mind-blowing idea from the Health Secretary that A&E should treat the sickest first and try and save lives. Whoever thought of such a mad thing for a health service to do? Genuinely, that's what the latest advice is. We'll talk about that up next. This is Talk.
It's got all the fact-checking done, and it was clear that they basically gaslit us and told us that this thing was happening, and it was absolutely not true. So he's lied about that to try and usher in measures that were just going to charge and survey us with ULEZ. We've seen that things like that he supported low-traffic neighbourhoods, massively unpopular, and in fact Croydon is just being accused of fraud on a high level because of these measures.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. Don't know the last time you went to A&E, but if you did turn up at a hospital, whether it was with a heart attack or maybe some sort of, problem with your leg or something like, maybe you understood the process of being triaged. You go in, you sign in, you say what you've got a problem with, and then you get assessed by a nurse or a doctor who then decides whether you're a priority or not. Well, it turns out that Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, has actually had to tell the NHS to prioritise emergency treatment for the sickest patients this winter. Why? He wants to prevent people dying unavoidably in A&E corridors. He called an urgent meeting yesterday with the NHS Chief Executive, the utterly hapless and useless Amanda Pritchard, and with hospital and ambulance leaders to address the obvious winter crisis. We know it's going to be a winter crisis because it's winter. That means we're going to have a winter crisis. And basically said, you need to prioritise the people in the greatest clinical need. Imagine having to tell that to the people who run hospitals in this country. Let's talk about this with Dr. John Puntis. He's co-chair of Keep Our NHS Public and a retired consultant paediatrician. John, thanks for joining us. Would you ever have needed to do that when you were in your job, to be told to prioritise those in greatest clinical need?
Hello, Julia. No, I mean, it's absurd in many ways, and it's what staff are doing all the time. But of course, they are really struggling to provide services, as you know, and we've discussed this before many times, but, if you look at accident and emergency, you can't get sick patients out of accident emergency into the beds when they're ill enough to require admission, and it's estimated that 14,000 of those patients are now dying avoidably each year. So I would say to Wes Streeting, look, you're now in charge of the NHS. The Tories may have wrecked it, but you're now in charge. You've got to come up with plans that are actually going to improve services, and you actually need to prioritise the care of the most sick patients.
Well, the thing is, again, you can't treat more people and getting them into A&E. We were told, we did a story yesterday about ambulance service in the West Midlands saying basically, if you're having a heart attack, get yourself to hospital because the wait for an NHS ambulance is going to be too long, which is mind-blowing, in those circumstances. You can't get people into A&E to treat them. You can't get those people already in A&E be treated to get into a ward until you've got the people on the wards already out, and that requires social services to work. You've got this circular system which is just abjectly failing. But everyone keeps forgetting about the social care side of things, which keeps people in hospital when they don't need to be, and it means more people go to hospital when they shouldn't need to.
Absolutely. And, about 1 in 7 beds, as you said, are full of patients now who could go home. They're medically fit to go home, but there isn't community support. And so there's been nothing in the NHS consultation, and probably nothing in detail in the 10-year plan coming out next spring about social care. And this is a huge, huge omission, which really does need rectifying.
Do you have any hopes at all that this Labour government, I'm sure you prefer a Labour government to a Tory government, given your campaign, Keep Our NHS Public, not that people were trying to not make it public. I'm not sure whether that's the right way to go about these things these days anymore, but do you have any hopes that Labour are going to be able to do this, improve things?
Well, firstly, we campaign for a publicly provided NHS based on its founding model, and we were set up when the last Labour government was in power because we didn't think they were doing a great job. Actually, the current government could learn a lot from the Blair-Brown government because they did invest more in the NHS.
They spent more.
They reduced waiting times and public satisfaction went up. And the ONS analysis of what happened under that government was that it was the investment in the NHS.
I think we have to be clear, we spent an absolute fortune more, and that saved more lives. However, we still had, at the end of the Blair-Brown years, an NHS, a publicly run system, where your chances of surviving a heart attack, cancer or any chronic disease was still lower than all of the other systems that aren't run on the NHS model in the rest of the Western world, which is perhaps a bit of a giveaway. Maybe the model is the problem. John Puntis will have to leave it there, I'm afraid. Time is against us. Co-chair of Keep Our NHS Public, Sam Armstrong. I'm a big fan of Wes Streeting. I think he's sharp. I think his heart's in the right place on this. He's willing to talk the talk. But if you have to tell the NHS to prioritise the sickest patients, something has gone horribly wrong.
Yeah, so far he's following the traditional model of health secretaries, which is just to punt a load more money at the NHS to have to fight tooth and nail to get them to do the bare minimum and not get better outcomes out of it at the end of it. Look, the truth is this. We're getting older and we're getting sicker as a society, and that's going to require a bunch more money. It's probably also going to require us to do things differently. But for now, we're using a system that's broken. We've got people like Amanda Pritchard that desperately need sacking. We're not sacking them. We're not sacking them. We're just channeling a little bit more money in, but the service is going to keep getting worse. Patients are going to die when they don't need to.
Crisis. Yeah, exactly. And the rich will buy their way out of it, which is what they're always able to do, leaving the poor with the poorest service. Love to hear your thoughts on that. If you want to get in touch, 0344 499 1000. More on Syria, that jihadi threat here. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Whether you're listening on DAB Plus Radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, it's great to have your company and also the company of commentator Sam Armstrong also joining me this morning. Thank you very much indeed. Lots of you getting in touch about the jihadi threat that's been raised. We were discussing this on the show yesterday, but the former head of MI6, who probably knows what he's talking about, he's been warning of the chronic threat to the West security, with the thousands of jihadis being held in Syrian prison camps right now. If they are released, they include, you know, a whole bunch of British jihadis. Jihadi Jack, remember him? Also jihadi brides. Hi, Shamima Begum, still going to try and come home. Indeed, her own lawyer has said that her chances of returning to the UK, despite being stripped of her British citizenship, could well be bolstered, he says, by the fall of Assad. Meanwhile, asylum cases from Syrians are being put on hold. 1 in 6 of all asylum cases granted in this country are from people who are from or claim to be from Syria, but given their claims pretty much are, I'm persecuted by the Assad regime, and the Assad regime has now fallen. Assad's fled to Moscow. Do those claims stack up? We'll be talking more about that. We're also going to be talking about Chancellor Rachel Reeves last night, vowing to take an iron fist to Whitehall spending, demanding that her cabinet colleagues get real on cutting the size of the state, she says. But, I mean, realistically, Labour government cutting the size of the state? Really? Plus, British heritage is sometimes just history on life support and should be allowed to die. Who said that? Well, one of Labour's biggest donors, our old friend Dale Vince. We'll talk about that as well. This is Talk. Welcome to the home of common sense. So much to talk about. Don't forget the telephone number to call on any of the topics we're talking about, including Wes Street and the Health Secretary having to tell the Health Service to prioritise the very sick so they don't die in corridors in A&E. I mean, if you have to tell hospital bosses that, I'm thinking those hospital bosses should be sacked. I don't think that... It's like telling to the soldiers, could you kill the enemy? Could you kill the enemy rather than let them kill you? If you need to tell people that, maybe they're not up to the job. But give us a call about the thousands of jihadis held in Syrian prisons, posing a chronic threat to the West if they're released. That's what the former MI6 chief has warned. People coming over here, many Brits trying to return. Pretty much open border policy these days, right? You just arrive on your Channel boat. What's your reaction to that? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK to 87222. Get in touch on X at Talk TV. Don't forget that your calls are charged at a national rate and texts cost a standard network rate message. Let's talk about this with all of this with Sam Armstrong. How worried are you about this threat from... I mean, again, do we think there's going to be a sort of a Conservative Lib Dem coalition government, completely inclusive and wonderful, really worried about rainbow flags and the like in Syria? I mean, no one sane thinks that. It could be worse than what Assad was doing to his own people. But either way, if jihadis are freed, and we have pretty much an open border, for all intents and purposes anymore, with Europe and with Syria, how worried are you?
Well, the truth is that Syria is largely going to carry on as it has been for the last decade or so. No one part of the country is going to be ruled by the same faction as any other. You're going to see this country basically breaking down into something a lot more tribal, frankly, than you've seen in the past. And you've seen at the moment factions are organising on religious and ethnic grounds.
That's always a good sign.
The Kurdish sector is being run and ruled by Kurdish militants. The Druze, smaller religious sector, running their own affairs, as are the Shia parts, as are the small Sunni minorities. And I think, frankly, that is likely to continue. What you are going to see, though, is as it descends into a zone of chaos, in geopolitical parlance, you're going to see the barriers that are holding in these camps, these open-air prisons, basically. They're keeping the old ISIS fighters in, that everybody in Syria was agreed a bad apple, was bad hombres, and it takes a lot to be a bad hombre out there. You're going to see them beginning to scatter. And some of them, fact, are going to make their way fearlessly, tirelessly, relentlessly to our shores. For whatever reason, whether they associate with this country or whether they hate this country and wish to cause it damage.
We're a soft touch.
And the truth is, we are literally powerless to stop them. There is nothing we can do. There will be terrorists right now, former ISIS fighters, the most dangerous people on the surface of the planet, who are in a camp, who within a matter of months will be walking the streets alongside you and alongside me. And our authorities, Keir Starmer, are not prepared to do any of the things necessary to stop them.
They really aren't, and that is the real concern, isn't it? I didn't have much faith in the last lot. I have even less faith in this lot. But 6,500 Syrians claimed asylum in this country in recent years. Almost all of them have arrived on Channel boats, arrived illegally. 1 in 6 of refugee claims that are actually granted are actually from people claiming, certainly to be from Syria. We know most people just drop their documentation. I mean, given so many coming from Syria, we know that most people arrive without documentation. They, what a coincidence, how convenient. But we also know there are 70 Brits in these Syrian camps. 15 of them are men, jihadis, men who've left this country, born, bred in this country, many of them, gone to Syria to fight for the Islamic State Caliphate when it was the latest big thing. 20 jihadi brides, including Shamima Begum, and some 40 children. I mean, this is terrifying if these people try and come back to the country, and we'll have the bleeding heart Liberals going, oh, but they've got every right to be back here.
Look, I take a pretty strong view on this. British citizenship, being a subject of the Crown, is not something that is just inviolable that you get. If you choose to walk out of this country, if you choose to join our enemies, if you choose to renounce this country, everything it stands for, if you choose to hate the King, if you choose to hate...
No, you can hate... No, I think you're allowed to answer to any of that. The key thing on this is that when people joined ISIS, they often did a ceremonial burning of their passport. They renounced their citizenship of Britain. Well, and then they wanted to... They basically said, I'm a citizen of the Islamic Caliphate. Well, fine.
As far as I'm concerned...
There you go, you made your bed.
Each and every one of those people individually declared war on this country. Yep. They did. And as far as I'm concerned, the moment you do that, you are no longer British, right? You don't get to just say that, oh, no, I was born here, I was raised here. No, I'm sorry. You chose to make your bed. Now you're going to lie in it. And that bed includes the fact that you said you were a citizen of the Islamic State. Now, the Islamic State got bombed out of existence, thank goodness. Yep. But I'm sorry, with that, so did your basic right to citizenship, nationhood, etc.
I mean, I'm very much the view that I would like these people back here and I want them in prison, but we know perfectly well they wouldn't be. Same with Shamima Begum. I think she's radicalised. I think she's a danger, terrorist threat to us as far as I'm concerned. But she wouldn't be kept in prison at all or for very long, and therefore is a risk. But I also don't want her being a risk to anyone else. That is the big concern. But as you say, we've got open borders. We have open borders. What can we do? Let's also talk about Rachel Reeves. Last night she vowed to take an iron fist to Whitehall spending. I mean, do you have any expectation or hope at all?
Yeah, she did that just as she announced another 100 million for civil service reform.
Well, there was this bizarre situation, wasn't there, where the Prime Minister was really quite rude about civil servants and the sort of failing civil service system. And then we had Pat McFadden, the real Deputy Prime Minister, Cabinet Office Minister, around going, oh, well, no, we just mean individual civil servants are very good, but they're trapped in a bad system. It's like, no, they're just upset that they've upset civil servants, even though they're going to have to upset civil servants to get anything sodding done in this country.
Yeah, look, it's taken the Labour Party all of 5 months to realise that the entire system of governance in this country is broken. It doesn't work. Every single Prime Minister, every single administration that goes in, doesn't matter what shade, what type of personality, comes in and says the same thing. Yeah. But they're all so paranoid of upsetting the civil service who then begin to leak everything to national
We know what happened to virtually every Brexit supporting minister, Priti Patel's, the Dominic Raab's, everybody.
They complain you out
he
of
has
office.
the same sandwich every day and he once shouted. Oh, get over yourself.
That nothing ever changes as this country spirals further and further into decline, and nothing in this country works anymore, and we're told to pretend that we have this Rolls-Royce civil service in which all of these officials are working tirelessly in order to make the country work better.
What I loved is that so many people in Labour, I think, were of the view, yes, but... but the civil service, they're not neutral. Of course, they've not been neutral. They're A, not first class, and B, not neutral, not carrying out the duties of government as civil servants, not the masters, the servants. It's in the job title, guys. I think the view was, but they hated the Tories, but they're going to do our bidding because they love Labour. Yeah, they're not going to do what they're told with you guys either. I mean, it's just... Do you think that things would be working better if Keir Starmer was ever in the country? I mean, we had free gear, two-tier Keir. I mean... Where are we, like air miles Starmer at this rate? The man is barely ever in the country. I think Guido Fawkes worked out he's spent a month of the 5 months he's been in power now abroad on various different junkets. Now, OK, I mean, an awful lot of these things, doing a tour of Bahrain, and he's in Cyprus today, thanking the troops for their work there in Cyprus. And that's a worthwhile thing to do. But... I mean, glad handing with a bunch of Arab leaders and yet another summit here and another summit there. It's all very well, and it is part of the job. But an awful lot of people are quite right in thinking, you know what, we've got quite a lot of stuff here that needs to be done. And we've seen this. I saw this with Tony Blair. You see it with pretty much every Prime Minister. They really like the foreign affairs thing, because you go along, you grandstand, red carpets rolled out. They don't travel like we do. They're not sitting in cattle class on Ryanair, mate. You know, they're in their private jet, and I've got no problem with that. I mean, Labour criticised the Tories for it beforehand, but they're quite happy to use them now. You're the Prime Minister of this country. You should arrive in style. You should be able to work on the plane. I've got no issue with all of that. That's part of the cost of doing business. But they feel like they're getting stuff done and they're busy because it's so much easier doing that sort of work than the really boring, hard slog, nitty-gritty of, you know, getting our immigration system sorted, sorting out the healthcare, sorting out the economy, boosting growth, doing the stuff which is really, you know, it's a hard slog, and you won't reap any real change and real achievement for at least 5 years, maybe even longer. But they don't like doing that. They'd rather be on a red carpet somewhere.
And, well, of course, one of the things you've got to look at is what do Prime Ministers tend to do when they leave office. And so many of them love to get onto these big international junket circuits, to get a UN position, to sit on this board, to go around there carrying on doing it. And there are some people that speculate that Keir Starmer, who it was reported had been in the last few days, was never really meant to become Prime Minister. It's been a bit of an accidental Prime Minister, is a nickname going around for him. Actually has now got his mind really on the next job, being a big figure on that international circuit for 10, 15, 20 years to come.
Well, look what happened to Nick Clegg. He's done very well. I mean, again, they go off and they make money. We know that. But again, for years, the EU, that's why they want to stay at the EU, because you go off, you know, you become president of the EU or something, don't they? That's what they wanted to do.
But, of course, actually, it does matter that the Prime Minister is home, and I disagree with Matt Vickers actually on this, because
that's the Tory MP.
The Tory MP we spoke to a bit earlier, who said, "It's a good job he's out of the country." Well, hang on, look, I want Keir Starmer to succeed, right?
Yes.
His ambitions are he's not said everything that I want him to say, but broadly speaking, I agree with everything he said. But here's the thing. Whitehall doesn't work. Civil servants don't work unless the Prime Minister gets personally involved, starts ordering stuff, cracking the whip, always demanding. You know,
accountability.
You said you were going to do this.
OK, you said you're going to do this, right? So 9 o'clock on Monday morning, back in my office, telling me what you've done.
Exactly. And the trouble is, Keir Starmer is simply not around long enough to make that happen. And that's before, of course, you factor in the fact that he doesn't work Friday evenings. We think he spends most of Saturday down the football at the executive box at Arsenal. So you are wondering, are we really looking at a part-time Prime Minister, or certainly a part-time Prime Minister in the country?
Well, yeah, I mean, we've had a part-time US president who's been asleep for the last 4 years, and my God, that shows in terms of America taking its eye off the ball. That's an issue as well, isn't it? Let's turn attention back to America, though. This arrest and charging of Luigi Mangione, a 26-year-old man who's been charged with murder over last week's fatal shooting of the United Healthcare chief executive Brian Thompson in what appeared to be a targeted assassination in New York City. Waited for a long time for this man to come out of the building and targeted him, shot him in the back of the head. He's been found after a 5-day manhunt. Concerned that he, you know, Ivy League student, you know, looks like he may have been radicalised. He's a suspect, of course, although, of course, the rules that the sub-judice rules in the UK don't apply in the States. People are allowed to talk freely. But it looks like he's been praising the Unabomber. But also criticism of the American healthcare system. We understand that on his... on some of the weaponry he had, basically, investigators say the shell casings found at the scene of the murder were the words deny, defend, depose. These are apparently what critics call the 3 Ds of insurance, tactics used by health insurance companies to reject claims by patients in America's healthcare system. We know it's the biggest cause of bankruptcy in America. We've got our own crisis and our own healthcare system. There are 2 healthcare systems that definitely don't work in the world, America's and Britain's. Yep. And they really, really don't. But there's a lot of anger at the healthcare and the insurance companies, and a scary amount of sympathy for this man, Luigi Mangione, the suspect.
Yeah, and an awful lot of similarities to that Unabomber case. Yep. Like him, he's got a manifesto, and there are ideas within that manifesto that many Americans will sympathise, empathise with. And we know that the criminal justice system there does have a habit of making heroes out of those that commit heinous crimes. But look, it is a totally broken system, and you can understand some of the frustrations of millions of Americans. Yeah. Of course, this man deserves to fry for what he's done.
Absolutely, never justified. Now, also, biggest story of the day, really, mince pie prices are up to, wait for it, 40% this year. I think in Tesco they've gone up by £1 for a packet of 6 mince pies. The reason why, I mean, who knew this? Turkey, which provides pretty much the entire world's sultana crop, has had a massive rainfall 2 years in a row, and they've basically not got many sultanas, so the price has gone up. It's called economics. We need to explain this to the Chancellor at some point. She hasn't got much economic background, as we know, but that means the price of them has gone up. However, in our office, amazingly, someone has, and I genuinely, these are homemade mince pies from the office kitchen, which someone has very lovingly left. Would you like a mince pie?
I would.
40% higher than usual mince pie. I don't know whether the inside.
From my wages.
So we can have our mince pies. Although they put them in the metal cases, but honestly, you can tell. Look, they are homemade. Let's hope they're as good as they look. Oh yeah,
they're very good.
Oh, really good.
They're very good.
I'm not sure.
I'll take that.
I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm not sure that eating mince pie while you're broadcasting is a good idea. But whoever made these, absolutely lovely. Thank you very much. We're going to have to take a break now for obvious reasons. Up next, your calls. I can't read the number out because I've got a mince pie in my gob. 11:19 is the time. This is Talk.
We'd got all the fact-checking done, and it was clear that they basically gaslit us and told us that this thing was happening, and it was absolutely not true. So he's lied about that to try and usher in measures that were just going to charge and survey us with ULEZ. We've seen that things like that he supported low-traffic neighbourhoods, massively unpopular, and in fact Croydon is just being accused of fraud on a high level because of these measures.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense, and we're just about finished those mince pies in time. Yummy, very, very good. Even if they're 40% more, still well worth it, I would say. Sam Armstrong, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Now let's get to the phone calls. Lots of people